Before we begin, it is important to understand that the albums covered in this video explore some of the darkest, most unsettling corners of the human experience. Themes of death, despair, mental illness, trauma, and existential dread are woven into the music you're about to learn about. Some of these works are emotionally intense, disturbing, and confrontational, pushing the boundaries of what many would consider comfortable listening. This video is not for everyone. If you are sensitive to dark, disturbing content, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The intent here is not to glorify or sensationalize these themes, but to explore how music can reflect the complexities of the human condition, even when it ventures into uncomfortable territory. Proceed with caution as we descend the abyss.
Welcome back to the weird, depressing, and disturbing albums Iceberg. We've reached Tier 5, and as we cross the midpoint of this journey, we're moving deeper into territories that are as challenging as they are disturbing. With only 3 tiers left after this, the albums ahead become more extreme, more willing to strip away conventional boundaries in sound, emotion, and themes. The works in Tier 5 Part 1 are not only dark, but confrontational, forcing listeners to confront the very fabric of discomfort and unease. This isn't just music, it's an experience that asks us to question our limits, to explore soundscapes that reflect the starkest, rawest part of the human condition. Here we find artists who dig into chaos, trauma, and existential dread, exploring sonic territories where few dare to tread. Every entry in this tier represents a unique descent into some of the most unsettling music creations yet encountered on this journey. If you've made it this far, prepare yourself. Tier 5 Part 1 pushes even further into the obscure and the disturbing. Let's begin. Our first descent into Tier 5 Part 1 begins with Wolf Eyes' 2004 release Burned Mind, an album that stands as a brutal testament to the power of noise and the limits of auditory discomfort. Burned Mind is not an album that offers solace or even melody. Instead, it immerses the listener in a relentless onslaught of distortion, feedback, and abrasive textures that feel almost physical in their intensity. This is music as confrontation, an album that demands the listener endure and experience rather than merely listen. Burned Mind opens with Dead in a Boat, a track that immediately immerses you in the unsettling world of Wolf Eyes. Layers of distorted static, guttural synth tones, and distant eerie noises come together to create an atmosphere that feels both claustrophobic and expansive. As the album progresses, tracks like Reaper's Gong and Stabbed in the Face push the boundaries of discomfort, using sounds that oscillate between distorted shrieks and rhythmic industrial pounding. There's a sense of aggression here, a rawness that feels like a descent into the chaotic, fragmented corners of the mind. Burned Mind captures themes of alienation, anger, and a nihilistic view of the world. The album doesn't try to make sense of these feelings. Instead, it amplifies them, reflecting a reality that feels chaotic, abrasive, and unforgiving. It's an auditory embodiment of isolation and urban decay, capturing a sense of emotional desolation that reflects the harsher realities of existence. In its distorted walls of noise, Wolf Eyes evokes a world where structure and order have broken down, leaving only the raw primal sounds of survival and despair. The production on Burned Mind is intentionally lo-fi, capturing a gritty, almost primal energy that enhances the album's impact. There's no polish here, no attempt to soften the harshness of the sounds. Each track is raw, intense, and unfiltered, reflecting Wolf Eyes' commitment to pushing the boundaries of noise music. The album's dense layers of feedback, screeching electronics, and guttural beats create a relentless, overwhelming atmosphere that feels like a descent into madness. Since its release, Burned Mind has become a cult favorite among fans of noise and experimental music, celebrated for its audacious approach and unyielding intensity. It's an album that has influenced countless artists drawn to the extremes of sound, shaping the noise genre and expanding the boundaries of what music can communicate. Wolf Eyes used Burned Mind to create a visceral, unsettling experience, one that pushes the listener to confront the chaos that exists both outside and within. In the end, Burned Mind isn't just an album, it's an ordeal, a test of endurance that challenges the listener to confront the darker, more chaotic side of the human experience. For those willing to immerse themselves in its abrasive world, Burned Mind offers a glimpse into a reality stripped of comfort and coherence, a place where only raw emotion and survival remain. Our next entry in Tier 5 Part 1 takes us to the strange, unsettling world of the Conet Project, recordings of shortwave number stations, released in 1997. This album is unlike anything else on this iceberg. It's not a work of conventional music, nor is it an attempt to evoke emotions through melody or rhythm. Instead, the Conet Project captures real recordings of shortwave number stations, cryptic broadcasts that have haunted the airwaves since the Cold War. Each track is a broadcast of numbers, tones, and strange, untraceable voices that feel as though they're coming from another world, one filled with secrecy and shadows. The album begins with recordings of female voices mechanically reciting long strings of numbers in various languages. These broadcasts are punctuated by eerie tones and signals, evoking a sense of paranoia and isolation. Tracks like the Swedish Rhapsody and Attention use distorted children's melodies and warped tones that add an almost surreal layer to the experience. Each sound is haunting in its simplicity, giving listeners the feeling that they're hearing something they were never meant to hear. The Conet project isn't just an auditory curiosity. It taps into themes of secrecy, espionage, and the unknown. These broadcasts are believed to have been used by intelligence agencies to send coded messages to operatives around the world, with the repeated numbers forming part of a cipher. The album draws listeners into the world of covert communication, hinting at hidden agendas and the unseen layers of global events. There's a profound sense of unease here, as if these recordings hold secrets from a darker, colder time, secrets that continue to linger on obscure frequencies long after they've lost their purpose. The minimalist nature of the Conet project enhances its haunting effect. Each track consists of little more than a voice, a melody, or a tone, but this simplicity makes the recordings feel even more unsettling. The lo-fi quality, the distorted radio waves, and the faint crackling of static all serves to amplify the sense of distance and mystery. It's as if these sounds are echoing from another era, preserved in the ether, connecting us to a world of espionage and hidden codes that feel both archaic and disturbingly relevant. Since its release, the Conet project has fascinated and unnerved listeners around the world, becoming an essential reference for fans of ambient, experimental, and dark-themed music. It's influenced artists who draw on the surreal and the mysterious, inspiring works that aim to evoke the same feelings of intrigue and tension. The album serves as both an artifact of history and a reminder of the layers of secrecy woven into the modern world, layers that exist just outside our reach. In the end, the Conet project recordings of shortwave number stations isn't an album in the traditional sense. It's a gateway into the unknown, an auditory experience that challenges the listener to confront the unseen forces that shape our reality. For those willing to delve into its mystery, it offers a glimpse into a world where every sound feels like a clue, where each broadcast is a message from the shadows. Our next descent in Tier 5 Part 1 takes us to Prurient's 2015 double album, Frozen Niagara Falls, an ambitious and haunting work that blends noise, industrial, and dark ambient elements into an exploration of despair, obsession, and fractured relationships. Prurient, the project of musician Dominic Furneaux, is known for pushing boundaries in the noise genre, and Frozen Niagara Falls stands as one of his most profound and unsettling achievements. This isn't just an album, it's a journey into the rawest depths of human emotion, confronting themes of loss and existential dread in ways that feel both deeply personal and universal. The album opens with Myth of Building Bridges, a track that sets the tone with its layers of distorted synths, intense spoken word, and moments of near silence. Furneaux's voice oscillates between agonized whispers and desperate screams, giving the music a confessional quality that feels like reading someone's most intimate, painful thoughts. The noise elements clash with faint melodies and industrial beats, creating a sense of tension that never quite resolves, leaving the listener suspended in a state of unease. Frozen Niagara Falls explores themes of obsession, betrayal, and inner turmoil, often drawing on Furneaux's own experiences and reflections. Tracks like Greenpoint and Cocaine Daughter dive into these themes with brutal honesty, capturing the feeling of spiraling through a mental landscape where hope and despair coexist, tangled together in ways that are both beautiful and tragic. There's a sense of catharsis here, but it's not comforting. Rather, it's the catharsis of exposing wounds that refuse to heal, of searching for meaning within pain. The production on Frozen Niagara Falls is layered and complex, blending harsh noise with haunting synth melodies and occasional moments of quiet reflection. The contrast between moments of calm and violent bursts of noise heighten the emotional impact, making the album feel like a descent into chaos punctuated by brief glimpses of clarity. The use of distortion and feedback is both overwhelming and hypnotic, drawing the listener into a soundscape that's as relentless as it is mesmerizing. It's an album that demands your attention, pulling you deeper into its intensity with every track. Since its release, Frozen Niagara Falls has been hailed as a landmark in experimental and noise music, celebrated for its emotional depth and willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. It's an album that has influenced a wide range of artists across genres, from industrial to dark ambient, and has carved a unique space for itself as a work that goes beyond mere noise to capture something profoundly human. Furneaux's ability to channel complex emotions into sound has solidified Prurient's reputation as a project that defies easy categorization. In the end, Frozen Niagara Falls is more than just an album. It's an experience, a visceral dive into the darkest parts of the psyche. For those willing to face its intensity, it offers a journey through suffering, resilience, and the search for meaning in pain. It's a haunting reminder of the beauty and terror that lies within us all, captured in sound. Our next descent into Tier 5 Part 1 brings us to The Body Lovers / The Body Haters, an experimental project by Michael Gira, the visionary force behind Swans. Released in 1998 and 1999, these albums go beyond traditional music, creating an immersive and unsettling exploration into the textures of noise, drone, and ambient soundscapes. The Body Lovers and The Body Haters aren't meant to be conventional listening experiences. Instead, they are sonic landscapes that evoke desolation, introspection, and the relentless, often chaotic forces within the mind. From the start, The Body Lovers immerses listeners in dark, abstract soundscapes that lack conventional structure. Tracks like City of Light and Lonesome Sound weave dense layers of ambient drones, dissonant sounds, and samples that feel ghostly and distant, creating a world that's both eerie and hypnotic. Gira uses every element to evoke sensations rather than clear messages, guiding the listener through moods that range from melancholy to outright dread. This is music stripped of melody and rhythm, a deep, unfiltered reflection of emotion and atmosphere. The themes behind The Body Lovers / The Body Haters are hard to pin down, but they seem to explore the complex intersections of body, mind, and isolation. There's an intense focus on the physical and psychological, as if each sound is meant to touch something primal within the listener. Each piece is an examination of decay, longing, and the tensions that arise when confronting oneself in solitude. It's an exploration of human vulnerability, delivered through a lens that is unflinchingly dark and deeply introspective. This isn't music designed to provide answers. Instead, it guides you deeper into questions about identity, purpose, and the spaces between pain and peace. The production on these albums is intentionally raw and experimental, capturing Gira's commitment to exploring sound as an art form beyond traditional musical boundaries. Layers of feedback, samples, and distortion are used to create a thick, suffocating atmosphere that feels immersive and engulfing. The recording methods are lo-fi and chaotic, giving each track an unpredictable organic quality, as if the music itself is alive, evolving, and shifting in real time. This adds to the feeling that the albums are less recordings and more environments, places that draw you in and force you to confront their bleak reality. Since their release, The Body Lovers and The Body Haters have found a following amongst fans of dark ambient, noise, and avant-garde music. The albums are seen as an extension of Gira's work with Swans, yet they push further into abstract soundscapes, refusing to conform to any single genre. Their influence can be seen in the works of artists who value texture, mood, and dissonance over conventional form, resonating with listeners who are drawn to the raw, untamed side of experimental music. In the end, The Body Lovers / Body Haters aren't just albums. They're experiences, immersive explorations into the dark, chaotic side of human consciousness. For those willing to step into their depths, these works offer a journey into an environment that feels both alien and painfully familiar, a place where sound becomes emotion and every noise echoes a deeper truth about the fragility of existence. Our next entry on Tier 5 Part 1 takes us to Comus's 1971 release, First Utterance, an album that occupies a chilling space with the realms of folk music and horror. First Utterance is a masterpiece of dark, psychedelic folk that tackles themes of madness, violence, and human depravity in a way that few albums dare to approach. The album's raw, unfiltered exploration of these themes creates an unsettling listening experience, one that feels as though it's unraveling dark secrets buried in folklore and ancient myths. The album opens with Diane, an ominous track that sets the tone with unsettling vocals, twisted guitar riffs, and eerie percussion. From the start, it's clear that Comus isn't interested in delivering a traditional folk album. Instead, they delve into something primal, even sinister. The music feels like an incantation, a ritualistic experience that grows more intense with each track. Songs like Drip Drip and The Herald explore themes of violence and lust in ways that are both visceral and haunting, blending lyrical content that borders on disturbing with a folk sound that feels twisted and ancient. First Utterance tackles deeply unsettling themes, drawing from stories of insanity, brutality, and the darker side of human nature. The lyrics describe acts of cruelty, suffering, and psychological turmoil, often in graphic detail. These aren't mere horror tales, they're explorations of the unrestrained id touching on the horrific urges that society suppresses. The album feels like a descent into madness, with each song peeling back layers of civility to reveal something wild and untamed lurking within the human soul. This isn't music designed to comfort, it's meant to challenge and provoke. The production of First Utterance captures this eerie atmosphere with stripped-down instrumentation that gives each track a raw, earthy quality. Acoustic guitars, hand drums, and flutes blend with tortured, almost deranged vocals to create a soundscape that feels both pastoral and nightmarish. The lo-fi recording quality enhances this effect, adding a sense of age and authenticity, as if these sounds are emerging from a dark past. The music feels rooted in nature, but twisted like an innocent folk tune contorted into something sinister and threatening. Though First Utterance didn't gain widespread attention upon its release, it has since become a cult classic, particularly amongst fans of dark folk, progressive rock, and horror-inspired music. Its influence can be seen in artists who embrace folk elements to explore darker themes, and it has inspired a range of musicians drawn to its haunting, unsettling energy. Comus created something timeless with First Utterance, a work that invites listeners to explore the depths of human psyche and the primal fears that remain embedded within our collective consciousness. In the end, First Utterance is more than just an album. It's a descent into a twisted, ancient world, a journey through folklore's darkest shadows. For those willing to immerse themselves, it offers a haunting, unforgettable experience that lingers long after the music fades, a reminder of the eerie beauty and horror that lies within the heart of humanity. Our next descent into Tier 5 Part 1 takes us to Royal Trux's 1990 release, Twin Infinitives, an album that breaks nearly every rule of conventional music. This isn't just a record, it's an experiment in deconstruction where rock, noise, and lo-fi aesthetics collide in a way that feels both unpredictable and deliberately chaotic. Twin Infinitives is as confrontational as it is bewildering, a surreal journey that challenges listeners to question what music can be. The album opens with Solid Gold Tooth, a track that immediately plunges the listener into dissonant guitar riffs, fragmented rhythms, and vocals that feel detached from reality. There's no clear structure here. Each track is a puzzle of distorted sounds and experimental textures. Tracks like Jet Pet and Ice Cream move from fragmented melodies to noise-laden chaos, making it clear that Royal Trux isn't interested in pleasing the listener. They're here to provoke and unsettle. It's a maze of sound that feels both immersive and alienating, drawing you in just as it pushes you away. Thematically, Twin Infinitives doesn't provide easy answers or coherent narratives. Instead, it revels in absurdity, exploring themes of excess, disillusionment, and the breakdown of artistic boundaries. The album's fractured structure and abrasive sound reflect a kind of nihilistic view of rock music itself, tearing down genre conventions to expose something raw and unfiltered beneath. It's an approach that reflects the chaotic energy of its time, a rejection of polished production and commercial appeal in favor of something visceral, messy, and real. The production on Twin Infinitives is intentionally lo-fi and distorted, creating an atmosphere that feels abrasive and disorienting. The recording quality is rough, amplifying the chaotic interplay between sounds and lending the music an almost unsettling intimacy. You feel as if you're listening in on a private, unhinged session where Royal Trux lets loose without restraint. The mix is dense, layering discordant guitars, feedback, and slurred vocals into a soundscape that feels both claustrophobic and expansive. The result is an album that defies easy listening and demands the listener's full engagement. Though Twin Infinitives was divisive upon release, it has since become a cult classic, celebrated by fans of noise rock and experimental music who appreciate its unfiltered approach. Its influence is visible in artists who push against the limits of genre, and it has helped shape the sound of underground rock, inspiring musicians drawn to its fearless disregard for convention. Royal Trux created something with Twin Infinitives that exists in its own space, a defiant statement against the polish of mainstream music. In the end, Twin Infinitives isn't just an album, it's an act of rebellion, a destruction of rock that challenges every expectation of what music should be. For those willing to confront its chaos, it offers a journey into the unknown, a place where sound itself becomes an experiment, and where the listener is left to make sense of the pieces. It's a bold, uncompromising work that stands as a testament to Royal Trux's vision, a vision that isn't interested in making things easy, but in pushing the boundaries of what music can become. Our descent into Tier 5 Part 1 brings us back to 1968 with Peter Brotzmann's Machine Gun, one of the most intense and uncompromising statements in free jazz. Described as a jazz explosion, Machine Gun abandons traditional jazz structures to push raw sound to its breaking point. It's not just a listening experience, it's an onslaught, a sonic protest that channels the political and social tensions in the late 1960s. The album opens with a literal bang. Machine Gun, the title track, doesn't ease in, It catapults you straight into chaos. Brotzmann, joined by an 8-piece ensemble of some of Europe's most daring jazz musicians, uses saxophones, trumpets, and drums in an all-out assault on improvised sound. The instruments collide, scream, and surge, capturing a sense of urgency and fury that leaves no space for melodic relief. There's a visceral sense here that each musician is fighting to be heard, yet collectively creating an unrestrained tapestry of rebellion and intensity. Machine Gun isn't just aggressive music, it's a reaction against both societal constraints and the limits of jazz itself. The album channels the rage and frustration of a turbulent era, conveying a kind of musical anarchy that mirrors the protests, revolutions, and upheavals of the 1960s. Every scream of the saxophone, every pounding drum beat, feels like a demand for change, a raw expression of dissatisfaction with the world as it was. The result is a piece that's chaotic, yes, but also profoundly impactful in its ability to use sound as a form of protest and catharsis. The production on Machine Gun is intentionally raw, capturing every detail of the sonic chaos with a rough, unfiltered edge. Recorded live in the studio, the album's lo-fi quality heightens the sense of immediacy. Each instrument's distortion, feedback, and sonic bleed create an almost claustrophobic atmosphere, making it all feel like the music is erupting from the speakers. This choice in production amplifies the album's chaotic energy, leaving no doubt that Machine Gun is meant to be felt as much as it's heard. Over the years, Machine Gun has become a foundational piece for free jazz and avant-garde music, influencing artists across genres who draw inspiration from its unapologetic intensity. Its influence is evident in noise, punk, and experimental music scenes, where musicians see Machine Gun not only as music, but as a philosophy, a defiance of rules, and a call to explore the raw potential of sound. Brotzmann's work here is both historically important and unflinchingly modern, capturing a spirit of protest and experimentation that continues to resonate. In the end, Machine Gun isn't just an album, it's an experience, an oral force that confronts listeners with the power of pure, unfiltered expression. For those ready to face its relentless fury, Machine Gun offers a journey into the raw, chaotic heart of free jazz, where music becomes both weapon and liberation. Let's pause for a moment to catch our breath as we move through each tier of the weird, depressing, and disturbing albums iceberg. The sounds and stories only grow more intense, more immersive. This journey isn't just about music. It's about exploring some of the most unsettling, raw, and emotional expressions captured in sound. Each album so far has revealed a different layer of darkness, whether it's through chaotic noise, haunting ambience, or themes that push us to confront difficult truths. Taking these all in at once can be overwhelming, a bit like descending into a place where the familiar becomes distorted and the comforting turns cold. But that's part of what makes this journey so captivating. These are the records that defy convention. They reach beyond entertainment to touch something deeper. So take a moment, clear your mind, and prepare yourself for what lies ahead. The descent only grows darker from here. Let's continue. Our next descent into Tier 5 Part 1 brings us to John Zorn's 1993 album, Kristallnacht, a harrowing work that confronts one of history's darkest chapters. Kristallnacht, which is German for the Night of Broken Glass, refers to the violent anti-Jewish pogroms of November 1938, which marked the beginnings of the Holocaust. Zorn's album is not merely a listening experience, it's a memorial and a confrontation, a sonic portrayal of terror, destruction, and grief that refuses to turn away from history's horror. The album opens with Shtetl, Ghetto Life, a track that brings listeners into the life and culture of Jewish communities before the storm. Traditional Jewish melodies are woven through unsettling textures, foreshadowing the violence to come. But it's the second track, Never Again, that delivers one of the most challenging listening experiences in Zorn's discography. Here, a cacophony of shattered glass, distorted feedback, and piercing saxophone shrieks evoke the terror of the fateful night. Zorn uses these sounds to place the listener in the heart of Kristallnacht itself, capturing the panic and destruction in a way that feels immediate and overwhelming. Kristallnacht is a powerful statement on the horrors of persecution and genocide, exploring themes of trauma, memory, and the unyielding presence of history. It's an album that doesn't allow the listeners to remain comfortable. Instead, it confronts them with the brutality of human actions and the wounds that linger across generations. Zorn's use of dissonance, silence, and abrupt shifts in tone serves as a reminder of how quickly peace can be shattered, how communities can be torn apart by violence and hatred. It's an act of remembrance that carries the weight of mourning and anger, as if Zorn is using music to bear witness to those who are lost. The production on Kristallnacht is dense and experimental, blending elements of free jazz, traditional Jewish music, and avant-garde noise. Each track is meticulously crafted to evoke a specific emotional response, from sorrow and nostalgia to horror and anger. The sounds of glass breaking, piercing feedback, and unpredictable rhythms make it clear that this album is not meant for passive listening. The intensity of Kristallnacht is meant to provoke, to make the listener confront the darkest aspects of humanity and reflect on the legacies of pain and survival. Since its release, Kristallnacht has been both celebrated and criticized for its unflinching portrayal of historical trauma. It remains a profound and influential work within experimental music, inspiring artists who seek to use sounds as a means of addressing difficult subjects. Zorn's willingness to confront the brutality of history has made Kristallnacht a landmark in his career, showing the power of music to serve as a voice of memory and a reminder of what must never be forgotten. In the end, Kristallnacht is more than just an album. It's an act of remembrance, a memorial built from sound. For those willing to engage with its intensity, Kristallnacht offers a haunting and unforgettable journey, a reminder of the lives lost and the resilience of those who remember. It stands as a testament to the importance of confronting history, no matter how painful. Our next descent into Tier 5 Part 1 takes us to Naked City's 1990 album, Torture Garden, a work that shatters musical convention with unapologetic ferocity. Led by avant-garde saxophonist John Zorn, Torture Garden is a chaotic fusion of grindcore, jazz, punk, and noise, packed into a series of short, brutal tracks that explode with relentless intensity. From the opening track, Torture Garden plunges listeners into a sonic maelstrom of screaming saxophones, thrashing guitars, and frenetic drums, with each track lasting mere seconds to barely over a minute. The album's structure feels like a series of musical snapshots. Each piece captures an instant of unrestrained chaos before abruptly ending and launching into the next. Tracks like Blood is Thin and Sack of Shit hurl the listener into violent, jagged soundscapes, blending shrieking vocals, unpredictable time signatures, and abrupt shifts in tone. It's as if each track is a mini explosion, capturing raw energy in a confined space. Torture Garden taps into themes of aggression, nihilism, and the breakdown of structure, creating an atmosphere that feels anarchic and almost apocalyptic. Zorn and his bandmates push each instrument to its limits, from frenetic, distorted guitar riffs to guttural screams and intense percussive blasts. This album isn't just music, it's a confrontation with the very concept of sound and genre, bending both to their breaking points. Listening to Torture Garden is akin to being caught in a chaotic, unpredictable whirlwind where nothing stays the same for more than a few seconds. The production on Torture Garden is as intense as the music itself. The sound is raw, abrasive, and mixed to maximize the visceral impact of each instrument. Zorn's saxophone screeches and wails through layers of distortion, while guitars and drums crash and collide with relentless force. Each track is a carefully crafted burst of aggression, designed to overwhelm and challenge the listener's sense of musical coherence. It's an album that insists on being felt as much as heard, with every track leaving you on edge, unsure of what's coming next. Since its release, Torture Garden has become a cult classic, celebrated by fans of avant-garde, grindcore, and experimental music. Its influence can be seen in artists who push the limits of genre, rejecting conventional structures in favor of something more raw, immediate, and confrontational. Torture Garden remains one of the defining works of John Zorn's career, embodying his fearless approach to music and his willingness to challenge both himself and his audience. In the end, Torture Garden is more than an album. It's an exercise in controlled chaos, a volatile mix of sound and styles that redefines what music can be. For those willing to confront its intensity, Torture Garden offers a rare experience, a journey into the heart of musical anarchy, where each track is a glimpse into unfiltered, explosive expression. Our next descent in Tier 5 Part 1 brings us to the Dead Sea's 1992 release, Harsh 70s Reality, an album that redefines the meaning of lo-fi experimentation. Known for their raw and unfiltered approach to sound, this New Zealand-based band created a work here that feels like a collision between punk rock, noise rock, and avant-garde, capturing the essence of underground rebellion. Harsh 70s Reality is unapologetically abrasive and confrontational. challenging listeners with its relentless distortion, fragmented structure, and uncompromising refusal to follow any traditional musical conventions. The album opens with Driver UFO, a track that immediately immerses you in thick layers of distorted guitars, static, and dissonant feedback. There's no clear rhythm, melody, or structure. Instead, the Dead Sea revels in chaotic noise, allowing each sound to develop organically. Tracks like Sky and Love push the approach even further, blending minimal, repetitive guitar riffs with layers of static and droning feedback. The result is music that feels disorienting, as if it's emerging from a distant, murky space, drawing the listener into a soundscape that's both hypnotic and unsettling. Harsh 70s Reality explores themes of disillusionment, nihilism, and the breakdown of conventional structures, making it feel as though the music itself is decaying and unraveling. The album captures a raw, unpolished sound that reflects the sense of alienation and frustration simmering with the underground music scene of the early 90s. It's a rejection of polished production and commercial appeal, instead embracing noise and distortion as a form of pure, unfiltered expression. The Dead Sea doesn't try to make their music accessible. They invite listeners to experience it on its own uncompromising terms. The production on Harsh 70s Reality is intentionally lo-fi and rough, amplifying the abrasive DIY aesthetic that defines the album. Each track is buried in layers of static, feedback, and distortion, giving the music a gritty, almost primal quality. The rough production feels like a direct statement, a way of stripping away any pretense and presenting sound in its rawest form. This approach immerses listeners in a sonic world that feels both claustrophobic and vast, like being surrounded by a dense wall of noise that stretches on infinitely. Since its release, Harsh 70s Reality has gained a cult following amongst fans of experimental and noise rock, celebrated for its radical approach to the sound and its disregard for traditional song structures. The album's influence can be seen in the works of artists who seek to break down the boundaries of rock music, finding inspiration in the Dead Sea's willingness to explore the darker, more chaotic side of sound. It remains a landmark in underground music, a reminder of the power of lo-fi and the strength of music that challenges and unsettles. In the end, Harsh 70s Reality is more than an album. It's an experience, an immersion into a world where noise becomes music, and structure gives way to raw emotion. For those willing to delve into its chaos, Harsh 70s Reality offers a journey into the depths of experimental rock, where the beauty lies in its harshness and the appeal in its audacious rejection of convention. Our next descent into Tier 5 Part 1 brings us to Cloak DVA's 1989 album Buried Dreams, a haunting exploration of technology, surveillance, and the dark side of human psychology. This isn't just an album, it's a cyberpunk vision set to sound, an industrial blend of cold electronics, eerie samples, and unsettling themes. Buried Dreams channels the alienation and unease of the digital age, creating a soundscape that feels both prescient and claustrophobic, a place where the lines between humanity and machine blur. The album opens with The Act, an ominous track that draws the listener in with pulsing electronic beats, mechanical rhythms, and shadowy synths. Each track feels like a different corridor in a vast, darkened complex, filled with echoes and metallic clangs that create a sense of foreboding. Tracks like The Hacker and Sound Mirror weave samples of computer sounds and distorted voices, giving the impression of data and secrets spilling out of unseen sources. It's as though Cloak DVA is guiding us through a dystopian landscape where technology dominates and human connections are fragments of the past. Buried Dreams explores themes of identity, surveillance, and the tension between progress and control. The lyrics touch on the ways technology shapes and observes us, as well as the psychological effects of living in a world where privacy is an illusion. Cloak DVA uses sound to capture society where technology has taken on a life of its own, probing our innermost fears about autonomy, manipulation, and loss of self. It's a vision that feels as relevant today as it did upon its release, a soundtrack for an era of perpetual observation and digital dependency. The production on Buried Dreams is dense and atmospheric, layering synthesizers, drum machines, and samples with meticulous precision. The sound is cold and mechanical, capturing the clinical detachment that defines much of industrial music. Cloak DVA balances minimalism and complexity, creating tracks that feel both sparse and intricately designed. Every beat, every note is crafted to heighten the sense of unease, drawing the listener deeper into a labyrinth of cybernetic dread. The lo-fi quality of the samples and the metallic edge to the synths add to the album's stark, unsettling effect. Since its release, Buried Dreams has become a classic in industrial and electronic music, influencing countless artists drawn to its dark, dystopian themes. Its legacy can be seen in work of artists who explore the intersection of technology and identity, using sound to reflect our increasingly digital lives. Cloak DVA created something with Buried Dreams that feels timeless in its exploration of modern alienation, a work that continues to resonate as technology's reach grows ever deeper. In the end, Buried Dreams is more than an album. It's a meditation on the price of progress, a warning of the dangers that lie within unchecked technological power. For those willing to explore its dark corridors, Buried Dreams offers a glimpse into a future where humanity's creations become our shadows, haunting us in ways we cannot escape. Our next descent into Tier 5 Part 1 takes us to SPK's 1982 album, Leichenschrei, a landmark in the industrial music genre that immerses listeners in a world of decay, violence, and mechanized brutality. Translated as The Scream of the Corpse, Leichenschrei is an unflinching exploration of mortality, using abrasive sounds, unsettling samples, and raw industrial textures to confront themes of death, mental illness, and the dehumanizing effects of modern society. This isn't just an album, it's a sonic manifesto that challenges listeners to face the darkest aspects of existence. From the opening track, Genetic Transmission, SPK introduces a harsh, metallic soundscape that feels mechanical and inhuman. Clanging metal, distorted voices, and pounding percussion combine to create a sense of disorientation and dread. Each track on Leichenschrei builds upon this unsettling foundation, layering in samples of medical procedures, fragmented screams, and droning industrial noise. Tracks like Postmortem and Desolation push these elements to their extreme, creating a relentless auditory experience that leaves little room for comfort. The themes of Leichenschrei are rooted in existential horror, focusing on the body as both a biological machine and a symbol of decay. SPK delves into the disturbing realities of life and death, treating the body as an object to be dissected, observed, and ultimately discarded. The album reflects a fascination with medical and psychological imagery, using samples and sounds that evoke surgical procedures, autopsies, and the clinical detachment often associated with these processes. It's a disturbing reminder of the fragility of the human body and the inevitability of death, a theme that feels as relentless as the music itself. The production on Leichenschrei is intentionally harsh and abrasive, enhancing the album's unsettling atmosphere. SPK utilizes layers of distortion, feedback, and tape manipulation to create a dense, claustrophobic sound. The lo-fi quality of the recording adds to the feeling of decay, as though the music itself is deteriorating, mirroring the themes of physical and mental disintegration. Each track feels like a descent into a sterile, clinical environment that's devoid of warmth or humanity, amplifying the sense of isolation and despair. Since its release, Leichenschrei has become a foundational work in industrial music, influencing artists across the genre who are drawn to its raw, uncompromising sound. It's a blueprint for noise and industrial artists seeking to explore dark themes and unorthodox soundscapes, proving that music can confront uncomfortable truths and provoke visceral reactions. SPK's willingness to delve into the morbid and the grotesque has cemented Leichenschrei as a cult classic, a work that remains as challenging and relevant today as it was upon release. In the end, Leichenschrei is more than an album. It's a confrontation with the bleakest parts of the human experience. For those willing to endure its intensity, it offers a powerful exploration of mortality, decay, and the limits of human resilience. It's a haunting journey through a world where the lines between life and death blurs, leaving only the raw, unfiltered screams of existence. Our next descent into Tier 5 Part 1 brings us to AMM's 1966 release, AMMMusic, an album that defies conventional structure and composition. AMMMusic is a pioneering work in free improvisation and experimental sound, creating a musical landscape that feels abstract and unpredictable, and almost otherworldly. Unlike traditional music, AMM's approach here is one of exploration, a collective improvisation that blurs the line between noise and music, leaving listeners to question what sound can communicate beyond melody and rhythm. From the outset, AMMMusic immerses listeners in an unpredictable world of found sounds, dissonant frequencies, and extended techniques. Each member of AMM, including Eddie Prevost, Lou Gar, and Keith Rowe, uses their instruments in unconventional ways. Rowe's prepared guitar emits feedback and unrecognizable textures. Prevost's percussion is sparse and subtle, and Gar's saxophone often feels like a breath or whisper rather than a melody. Tracks like Later During a Flaming Riviera Sunset evolve slowly, without a clear structure or destination, drawing the listener into a meditative state that feels at once alien and familiar. AMMMusic explores themes of chance, spontaneity, and the nature of sound itself. The album captures the idea that music doesn't have to follow set rules or provide easy answers. It can instead be an open field of possibilities, a conversation between musicians and their instruments without any preconceived notion of harmony or order. It's a sonic experiment that reflects the avant-garde ethos of the 1960s, where the boundaries of art were being pushed and redefined. By embracing this ethos, AMM invites listeners to experience music as a living, breathing process, rather than a finished product. The production on AMMMusic is raw and minimalistic, capturing every subtle nuance of the performance. Each scrape, breath, and resonant tone is left in its natural state, creating an intimate listening experience that feels as though you're in the room with the musicians, observing each moment as it unfolds. The album's lo-fi quality and organic sound enhance its meditative experimental nature, leaving the listener with a sense of immersion in pure sound. This minimalist approach captures the essence of AMM's philosophy, allowing the focus to remain on the spontaneity of the performance rather than any studio manipulation. Since its release, AMMMusic has become a seminal work in free improvisation and experimental music, inspiring countless musicians drawn to its raw and unfiltered exploration of sound. It's a landmark in the avant-garde scene, paving the way for future generations of artists who see music as a form of abstract expression. AMM's willingness to challenge traditional music boundaries has made AMMMusic a cult classic, a touchstone for those seeking to explore music's potential as a canvas for pure creativity. In the end, AMMMusic is more than just an album. It's a glimpse into the possibilities of sound, a testament to the beauty of uncertainty and the power of collective improvisation. For those willing to embrace its abstraction, AMMMusic offers a journey into the unknown, a place where music becomes an open-ended question rather than a finished statement. Our next descent into Tier 5 Part 1 brings us to the Haxan Cloak's 2013 album, Excavation, a journey through darkness that feels like an exploration of the afterlife itself. Known for his deeply atmospheric and cinematic soundscapes, British producer Bobby Krullick, under the moniker The Haxan Cloak, created Excavation as a haunting meditation on death and the unknown that lies beyond. This album isn't merely dark, it's otherworldly, evoking the sensation of being pulled into a place where light is scarce and every sound echoes with a sense of finality. Excavation opens with Consumed, a track that immediately immerses the listener in a shadowy world of low, rumbling bass, distant whispers, and reverberating drones. Each sound feels carefully chosen, building an atmosphere of dread and anticipation. Tracks like Mist and The Mirror Reflecting Part 2 add to this sense of weight and depth, layering sounds that feel almost tactile. There's a haunting beauty here, one that feels like an invitation to venture deeper into a hidden realm, as if each track is guiding the listener through different stages of the afterlife. Thematically, Excavation represents a journey through death, a descent into the unknown, where each sound feels like a step further from the world of the living. Krullick uses textures, dissonance, and silence to evoke a sense of isolation and surrender, reflecting the album's concept of the soul's journey beyond the physical realm. This exploration of death isn't violent or chaotic. Rather, it's contemplative, confronting the listener with a vast, empty space that feels as beautiful as it is unsettling. Excavation suggests that the afterlife is not a place of answers, but a liminal space of ambiguity and reflection. The production on Excavation is dense and meticulous, with each sound treated as a crucial part of the album's narrative. The use of sub-bass frequencies creates a physical, almost oppressive weight, grounding the listener in a world that feels immense and inescapable. Krullick layers ambient textures, distant echoes, and haunting vocal samples to create a sense of depth that's both immersive and disorienting. This attention to detail transforms Excavation into more than an album. It's a sensory experience, one that envelops the listener in darkness and compels them to confront the unknown. Since its release, Excavation has become a cornerstone of dark ambient and experimental electronic music, resonating with listeners drawn to its profound exploration of death and the afterlife. Its influence is seen in artists who push the boundaries of electronic music, using sound as a tool for storytelling and psychological exploration. The Haxan Cloak created something timeless with Excavation, a work that captures the human fascination with mortality and the mystery of what lies beyond. In the end, Excavation is more than an album. It's a passage into the depths of the unknown, a sonic journey that lingers long after the final notes fade. For those willing to surrender to its darkness, Excavation offers a profound and unforgettable experience, one that challenges us to confront the inescapable mysteries of life, death, and everything in between. Our final descent into Tier 5 Part 1 brings us to Gnaw Their Tongues' 2011 album Flagellum, Sanguemque, Tenebras, Veneramus, which translates to Through Whips and Blood, We Worship Darkness. This title alone sets the tone for what lies within, an album that plunges listeners into the depths of sonic horror and despair. Known for blending black metal, noise, and industrial music, Gnaw Their Tongues, the project of Dutch musician Maurice, uses this album to explore themes of violence, nihilism, and the darkest part of human nature. The album opens with Hic est enim calix seguinis me, an unsettling track that greets the listener with distorted guttural vocals, pounding percussion, and walls of noise that feel overwhelming and inescapable. Each track on this album builds a relentless sense of dread, with titles like The Stench of Burning Wings and Rite of the Blood Eagle, evoking scenes of ritualistic horror. The music feels like a descent into a nightmare, a place where every sound is designed to unsettle, unnerve, and push the listener to confront the most brutal aspects of existence. Flagellum, Sanguemque, Tenebras, Veneramus delves into themes of sacrificial violence, suffering, and worship of darkness. The album is filled with references to religious iconography twisted into scenes of pain and corruption, a descent into realms that feel both unholy and blasphemous. Maurice uses these themes to confront listeners with the harsh realities of mortality and human depravity, exploring a world that has abandoned hope and revels in chaos. This isn't music that offers a reprieve, it's music that forces listeners to sit with discomfort, to experience the sounds of suffering without any promise of redemption. The production on Flagellum, Sanguemque, Tenebras, Veneramus is dense and overpowering, layering thick walls of distortion, feedback, and distorted chants to create an atmosphere that feels suffocating. The album's lo-fi quality and aggressive mix only add to the intensity, immersing listeners in a soundscape that feels oppressive and claustrophobic. There's no space to breathe, no moments of silence, just an unrelenting assault of sounds that make each track feel like a ritualistic descent into darkness. Since its release, Flagellum, Sanguemque, Tenebras, Veneramus has become a notorious work in the realms of extreme and experimental music. Gnaw Their Tongues has cultivated a following amongst listeners drawn to the darkest, most uncompromising corners of sound, where music serves as a form of psychological horror. The album stands as a testament to the power of sound, to evoke fear and confront us with uncomfortable truths about humanity's darkest impulses. In the end, Flagellum, Sanguemque, Tenebras, Veneramus is more than just an album. It's a descent into sonic terror, an unflinching exploration of horror and despair. For those willing to embrace its intensity, it offers an experience that is as disturbing as it is unforgettable, a journey into darkness where only the brave dare to tread. And so we conclude our journey through Tier 5 Part 1 of the weird, depressing, and disturbing albums Iceberg. This tier took us deeper into darkness and chaos, where each album pushed boundaries and shattered conventions, revealing the most unsettling and uncompromising sides of music. From brutal soundscapes and psychological terror to raw expressions of despair, these works challenge us to confront uncomfortable truths about the world and ourselves. As we reach the midpoint of the iceberg, the descent only intensifies. The albums ahead delve even further into extreme realms, where darkness takes on new forms and the line between music and pure experience continues to blur. For those brave enough to continue, Tier 5 Part 2 promises to be even more harrowing, filling with sounds and stories that defy explanation and test the limits of what music can convey. If you've been following the journey from the beginning, thank you for joining me as we explore the shadows of the music world. And if you're just now discovering the iceberg, you can find the complete playlist in the video description to catch up with all previous tiers. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated as we dive deeper. And as always, stay squishy.